All right, guys, Friday's workout is going to be a pretty simple one, so we'll breeze through this pretty quickly. Um, Really happy to see what the workout is for the CrossFit Open, and even more happy to see how well prepared we are for it. We did the wall walks and double unders workout 2 weeks ago, and then last week we did dumbbell snatches as well as boxes. So, I mean, we're pretty comfortable with these patterns. It shouldn't be anything that's too surprising or too difficult. The biggest thing to note is the difference in movement standard for the wall walk, which is where now instead of being measured off the shoulder, it's now measured a fixed distance from the wall. That's pretty much the only change, the only real curveball that we have thrown at us. So we'll talk about how to approach that later on. Today, what we're going to do is just work on some absolute strength for part A. This is using absolute strength patterns that are going to be completely unrelated to the workout that we have tomorrow. So we'll be doing some supinated grip weighted pull-ups. I want you guys to try to challenge yourself here, but you don't need to push yourself too hard. Remember that if you are trying to get a good score for the Open, that's your one big day of the week. Everything else kind of can take a step back and be in the background. You don't really need to push yourself hard on today's session, but if you do feel like it, you do feel like you want to, go for it, because it shouldn't really impact your performance tomorrow anyway. All right, then for part B, we're going to be working on an EMOM where we will implement all of the movements that we'll find in tomorrow's Open. So there'll be wall walks, there'll be some dumbbell snatching, and there'll be some box jump overs. Take this opportunity to practice the movement, make it as efficient as possible, be as technical as you can, really dive into the ways that you're performing the movement and look for efficiency. Try to use as little energy as possible to perform the movements. If you can be efficient, this is going to make the workout so much easier for you, save you a ton of energy, and leave you so much more in the tank for the end. Finally, for the last bit, we're just going to go on to a nice little bit of cyclical work. Easy pace. Make sure that you guys are following the prescription of how intense to go for their 3-minute, your 2-minute, and your 1-minute intervals. And yeah, we'll just push through and have a good time with that. I'm going to take you over to the wall. Okay, the first thing you'll need to do is get yourself marked up with a couple of lines. The first line should be 10 inches from the wall to the outside edge. Your next line will be 60 inches from the wall to the inside edge if you're male, and then 55 inches from the wall to the inside edge if you are female. This same line is going to be used regardless if you're scaled or RX. Your final line will be across the floor at the 9-foot mark. That line will be crossed right there. Your box will then be behind that line. So like we mentioned previously, the difference between last year's wall walks and this year's wall walks is the distance of the line. It is now no longer measured with your shoulder, which means that regardless of how tall you are or how short you are, that line is going to remain a constant distance. So it is no longer necessary for you to get your heels flat on the wall when you're measuring, because it's completely irrelevant. So let's talk about the scaled movement standards first. With your line being 60 inches away, you will have a 2-inch line, and your hands must be in front of that line before coming behind the line. When you bring your hands behind the line, your feet must be on the wall. So I'll demonstrate what I mean. Like I said at the start, your feet no longer have to be flat against the wall. You'll see if I get my feet flat against the wall and I put my shoulders down, my line would normally be here according to last year's standards. Now it's a little bit further forward. So for me, it might be better if I was to just rock up onto my toes slightly, which would put me into the same angle as I would be in for last year's standards. I'd press up, get my hips up high, put my feet onto the wall, walk my hands past the wall, past the line, making sure that I have a little bit of space in between my fingers and the line. Again, if I'm touching the line here, that's a no rep. I could just pull my fingers back and that would be a good rep. From there, I put my hands back in front of the line, bring my feet back to the floor, bring my chest to the floor, and that would complete my scaled repetition of the wall walk. So biggest things to note are coordination is going to be key here, making sure that you're not moving your hands until you've gotten both your feet onto the wall. The things I'd like you to try to practice are what position works best for you. If you're a taller athlete, then maybe putting your heels against the wall is going to be better, because it'll give you more stability and allow you to walk up further onto the wall easier while still not sacrificing distance towards this line. If you're like me and you're a little bit shorter, then I'd like to get my toes here so I can have a strong pressing position. And as I come up, then I would probably choose whether to get my hips low, like this with my knees bent. And you can see how this here makes it a much faster repetition, but there is more weight or more load on my shoulders. So up higher makes it a little bit easier, but now there's more distance between my hand and my feet. So the higher up I go, the further I have to stretch. Now let's talk a little bit about the RX. For RX, the standards are going to be that your hands must start in contact with the line. Any part of the hand touching is valid. Therefore, if I just get my fingers right there, that is still a good repetition. So for the RX version, I would definitely start with my feet against the wall, because right here, this is a really comfortable position, whereas if I get rocked up forward, this here is not. So heels against the wall for me, doing the RX standard. I then pike my hips up as high as possible to try to gain as much distance as I can, put my foot up as high as possible, and then once both feet are on the wall, I start to walk until I get my heels of my hand into that line. Both heels must touch, so you can see here touching, before walking all the way back down, touching my fingertips to the line, and bringing my chest down to the floor. So just like the scaled, would want you guys to try to practice making sure that you're keeping your hands on the line until your feet are both up on the wall. And for this RX version, hips up is definitely the way to go. There's no question about it. It'll give you less distance to travel with your legs and make it a lot easier for you to be able to walk towards the line. All right, guys, so that was pretty much it. I only really want to talk about the talking points of the wall. For the dumbbell snatches, it's pretty much the same movement standards as normal. One thing to take note of there, though, is that you could switch the dumbbell anywhere that you like. You can switch on the floor, you can switch above your head, you can switch in front of your eyes. For me personally, I'm going to be switching in front of my eyes because that's what I've been practicing. I'm most comfortable with that movement. But if you want to do something else that you're comfortable with, that's perfectly acceptable. The goal for today's session would be for you to try to practice all of the different ways to switch, the different ways to snatch, whether you're using a power snatch or a muscle snatch, or if you want to do a split snatch. These are all perfectly valid options that are available to you. So practice, see which one feels the most comfortable for you, the most efficient. Again, efficiency is going to be the thing that is going to help you to get the most repetition. So it's not necessarily what's fastest, it's what's most efficient for you. Okay, one thing to take note of for the box jumps as well is that you have the ability to step up if you're in the scale division. So if that's an option for you, I would definitely take it because it's a lot faster to do a box step over than it is to do a box jump over. And again, it takes less energy, therefore is more efficient, which means you probably get a better score. So if you have that option available to you, then go ahead and take that. If you're in the scale division, step ups are definitely the way to go. Guys, the goal for today is to get through this EMOM as efficiently as possible. So dial in your movement patterns, make sure that you're moving as smoothly as possible, and then you'll be able to rest with whatever time you have remaining on the clock. Again, this is a non-fatigue based training, so don't push yourself too hard. Don't put yourself into any sort of pain cave. The goal here is to just dial in your movement patterns for tomorrow. So good luck, have fun, and good luck on tomorrow's tester.